Okay.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. And thank you, Watershed Association, for setting up this meeting with the Zoom link. We have some county staff here this morning as well. We have our plan manager, Brett Clavio, here, and our natural resource specialist, Monica Harmon, in the room, and Adeline Murtry, our open space team leader, will be joining shortly as well. I know we have received the agenda today for today's meeting, and there's about 6 different items on there. So what I'm proposing is that if we can take about maybe 20 minutes or so to talk about our proposed grant application for a Section 319 for Wetlands Action Plan implementation. But I'm guessing we're budgeting about or sort of allocating about an hour total for this meeting today. And I know folks, including Darren, want to talk about the proposal maybe for a national monument as well at Cajal del Rio. So we'll start out maybe aim for about 20 minutes, talk about wetlands, and you guys give me some feedback as we go along. So as we know, what we're aiming to do is submit a grant application for a Section 319 grant to NMED, and folks internally and some folks I've talked to in the community were thinking maybe going for about $400,000. The required contribution from local government is just 10% in kind. Okay, so this is sort of a rare opportunity that I think it's something we should really take advantage of. So a 10% in-kind contribution from the county will be a combination of staff labor, equipment, as well as our GIS database. So Alan Klatt, NMED, has been in our contact to this point, and Alan said they're aiming to get the NOFO out this month, and the application period will be 60 calendar days. So if it comes out, say, later this month, then we'll have to, I guess, late March to submit a grant application. And where I left off talking with a number of you on the phone and staff internally was, if we're going to go for a grant amount of, say, $400,000, we're probably going to want to go for fewer sites than more, aiming for quality projects, maybe sites with a variety of characteristics, with different types of interventions. And in our initial conversation, we were looking at 6 possible sites towards the south end of the county, being 3 in the Santa Fe River, mid and lower Santa Fe River, Arroyo Hondo open space possibly, Galisteo Village area, south of the village, east of Highway 41, San Cristobal Playa, and in the Cerrillos Hills State Park, there's springs, and there's actually a wetland up above on the west side of Camino Turquesa up there. So these were I guess we could say, preliminary sites that we were considering. So folks, so this will open up to the group, and we have our open space team leader, Adeline, here. I think you all know Adeline quite well. Everybody? Okay. So again, if we're thinking of going for $400,000, do we think 6 sites is appropriate, or do we want to possibly reduce that number down to do more sort of detailed, what we think is more detailed and quality intervention? So Darren, you got your hand up. Please chime in.
Yeah, Andrew, first, just to clarify on 6 sites. So we've got, it looks like a couple on the Galisteo River, huh?
Yeah, well, Wetlands Action Plan 2023, if you the recommended sites, you'll see, pages like 109 to 113 in there. And we want to aim for sites that are on county land, or if they are in another jurisdiction, we want to make sure that we can get approval very quickly from that jurisdiction. So if it's perhaps City of Santa Fe or the airport, you could probably get approval very quickly. We're anticipating just a 3-year window to implement the grant. So for Galisteo, as we probably, most of us probably know, the riparian area actually that runs through the middle of the historic village is, most of that's actually owned by the community association, right? So that could be a little bit more tricky to do work in there, but work is needed in there, and maybe that's something that community association could also apply for a grant at some point.
Does the community association have a standing as subdivision of the state? For instance, do they have an ASECA or a Mutual Domestic Water Consumers Association?
Yeah, two MDs there. There's the Galisteo Village MD, and then southwest of the village is the Ranchitos MD. And I've spoken to a member from each of the MDs, and also Jennifer Martin from the Community Association. She's the president of the Community Association. And she initially suggested actually doing the riparian area that runs through the center of the village.
Right. And so I guess my question there is there, I guess, a perennial or an ephemeral flow? And that is the Galisteo River is the source, no? Or is it some other Rito or what?
Yeah, it's the Galisteo River. And my understanding is it's basically always it's flowed year round, meaning, so if you follow the creek north, you'll see the creek, it sort of emerges, it goes underground, it emerges. And what they told us recently is it's the first time that section of the creek has actually gone dry in quite a few years.
Okay, but then leading further down, this is all above the Galisteo Dam, which is a dry lake bed, if you will, right? But part of a bigger Corps of Engineers plan from, all the way back to 1953. However, okay, so that's my concern, is just only, there is an actual, I guess, wetland of some sort there. And is any of that leftover tailing pits or leftover from mining activity?
Well, I guess if you don't mind, I'll just go back to the site recommended. It's in the WAP. It's actually recommending San Cristobal Playa, which is on the east side of Highway 41. And I could bring up the map, but east side of 41, south of the village, south of Galisteo Creek. And I walked it on the weekend. It's just an affected area where you've got scouring and some incising going on. Some invasives, a lot of willows actually. And so some sections are slightly overgrown, and there's also some head cutting for sort of the arroyos which drain into it. But it could definitely, it could use some work, I think. But it is on county land, so that's why we identify it as additionally anyway as a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a comment.
Sure.
Carl Dickens contacted me and said that they're applying for a grant for the river below the wastewater treatment plant. I don't know how those efforts here and what he's intending to do would collaborate or conflict.
Yeah, that's right. And I know there's some people on the call from the Traditional Communities Collaborative who probably know a little bit more about that proposed grant application than we do. As Monica was mentioning, the proposal to apply for a grant for aquatic river restoration. And these are lower, I'm trying to remember what the location, Carl, was.
It's below the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, okay, below the wastewater treatment plant.
And he told me the open space as well, the La Cienega open space.
I can speak to that a little bit. It is our next agenda item too, but we don't need to necessarily spend too much time. I think that while I am not qualified to speak on behalf of the city, of course, I have been in some of those conversations. And so I think that those applications are still kind of hypothetical, that Carl is exploring the feasibility of applying for those and working with different city staff members. But I think that Carl and everyone is aware that any application for the lower watershed needs to be a comprehensively collaborative process, which of course is not possible in the short amount of time before, especially this first phase of the grant is due, which is April 15th. And so the Watershed Association and other community partners have recommended that at least for the first round of applications that the city focuses on restoration projects within the city itself. The river and watershed section has projects identified already within the city boundaries. So that might be a stronger and more simple application. The River Commission is already positioned to help with that application. So in the short run, that's likely a stronger application that the city will support, and then, explore long-term other opportunities for the lower watershed. But I don't think that personally, I don't think that the county should be kind of thinking about that application as exclusive or excluding the county from doing your own planning, or but most importantly, I think all planning needs to go through the communities themselves. And so hopefully we can center that again today too. But just to reemphasize that, yes, so far though, that grant opportunity for the lower watershed that the city is exploring is still hypothetical. So in a very hypothetical space.
What area would that include?
Not even sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there have been several discussions, but I think they are all dependent on other planning processes that are underway. So Darren,
If I could try and give some quick background on that, and I'll be as concise as I can. From the lower from the discharge of the Paseo Real plant is the outflow of the effluent, which is constituting the majority of the flow of the lower Santa Fe River. Okay, so what we're going back to is already a 2000, geez, it's at least 20 years old by now. There was at the time, Forest Earth Guardians tree planting, quote, restoration, unquote, plan that was executed down there, and has not been properly managed since the first big effort to plant those trees. That later resulted in a beaver infestation. It's resulted in impounding of irrigation water upstream on the river and preventing acequias from having access to their irrigation water from time to time. 2006, the river went dry in La Bajada. We lost a lot of amphibians and other creatures down here at that time. What is interesting, and what I'd like to bring to the attention of county staff to fast forward it back up here into the 21st century, is that there was in 2016 Open Space developed together with county utilities a management plan for that artificial wetland, and that has been dusted off a couple times, but never maybe looked at. We didn't even see it come off the shelf again until there was talk of a return flow credit pipeline leading from that discharge to take water back to the Rio Grande that would result in a 50% reduction in flow from the treatment plant into the Santa Fe River. So there's as much concise background as I can put into it. I think now plans are, grant applications, et cetera, are still highly aspirational, but the intent, at least from the traditional communities, has been to manage that overgrowth and restore uninterrupted flow from those pools and ponds and septic dumps that are still there accumulating who knows what types of pharmaceuticals, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea is to restore flow of the river from that artificial wetland and continue down all the way eventually to down here to La Valhalla.
You guys want to chime in now or?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay, we can.
But what
Yeah,
I'm trying to say is there's an existing at least foundational management plan for maintaining the willow planting, doing some of the overgrowth removal, and I'm not sure exactly where that's at. So county staff, if you can look in your archives and perhaps find that open space and trail management plan that was specifically for that section, then I think we might have some foundational data to work from and start working towards better management of that reach of the river directly from the outfall of the plant leading through Cieneguilla and then La Cienega.
Right.
I guess I have a question, and I'm sorry if I'm not well informed on this, but what are the plans for the return flow pipeline?
Again, not being it, I don't see the city guys here, and if Carl were here, he may tell us they are still in flux. The last initiative that we heard about to the traditional communities was a change in strategy from the city to maybe halt that construction or shelve those plans and look for an application to the state engineer for return flow credit down the natural course of the Santa Fe River to its confluence with the Rio Grande here just below the Cochiti Dam.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we definitely do see potential for work in the county open space area that you were talking about. However, I'm kind of reluctant to invest such a big effort in restoration until we know what the water flow is going to look like from the wastewater treatment plant.
Can I also ask if there are any updates about restarting the county lower watershed planning process? Because I think that might also be important to inform this process.
Yeah. County lower watershed planning process. Our utility staff, Travis Soderquist, he at our last WPAC meeting, he gave an update on the proposed study for the actually, I guess an ongoing study for the lower Santa Fe River. Tonight we have WPAC at 4 p.m. So maybe we get another update from Travis on that as well. My understanding is that the city of Santa Fe also has a lower Santa Fe River watershed study going on. So I left a voicemail with Zoe Isaacson this morning to catch up with her, but hopefully we can a little more updates on those later today or tomorrow.
Thanks. Yeah.
Look at this list of projects. 6 projects is probably too much for $400,000.
Right.
And you have to look at the likelihood of success on the 6 different projects. And one factor might be that it's not your land to work on. And so, as you mentioned, the expedition of approvals to work on it, but also like which of the activities are actually going to result in pollutant load reductions, like which are concrete activities that you could, I think with 319H grants, even though it's a wetland, you're still going to have to do load reduction calculations. And there have been plenty of 319 projects that are education and outreach. But then how do you attribute the pollutant reductions to those activities? So I think it's a matter of like prioritization. If you guys really want to do these projects and putting some costs to them, and then the ones at the bottom drop off the list.
Okay, so I guess did anybody else want to chime in, or can I?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. Good points, Karen. I was wondering if when you were choosing the sites, it sounds like a lot of the choice was if they were on your land, was not being familiar enough with being able to like picture where every site is. Was there any thoughts on like connectivity and like the impact that they would have on each other, part of the site choice?
Yeah, I think, does anybody else want to chime in, or I guess I'll continue on. In terms of connectivity, 3 possible sites in the lower Santa Fe River. That's I guess the closest we have for, I guess, in terms of connectivity. Of course, we talked about possible other grant applications being submitted, so we want to coordinate with those. And I think, was it Carl said on a previous call that Sage Dunn at BLM was talking about, this I'm duplicating the same grant application here, but 2 BLM sites actually doing maybe a grant as well on 2 possible BLM sites. So obviously something we need to consider and coordinate. And for lower Santa Fe River Box Canyon site, maybe I'll just bring that up because we haven't mentioned that so far. As Darren, who La Bajada Village is good familiar with that site, and some of you, I understand there's land claims still going on in that area, which also involve Cochi Pueblo. So in the WAP 2023, the recommended actually project there would just be for an assessment, because and I haven't physically been down there myself, but I understand it's a little more remote, and because our land ownership matters to be resolved, the WAP 20 again proposes just doing an assessment of that site of what a riparian restoration intervention might be. Darren, did you want to comment on that site?
Well, I guess it's inclusive of a couple of 3, should we say, overlapping jurisdictions. So when you're talking about the Box Canyon, I think you're starting off mentioning the 2 BLM sites. One would be the Rael Ranch. Then the next downstream would be the Rancho Tres Rios. And then we're going down through a stretch of BLM land and a stretch of Forest Service land before you get to the Peñasco Blanco, or the Bocas de Cenetu, the opening in the Mesa, out of which the Santa Fe River flows into the village of La Bajada. So between there, we still have an unsurveyed portion of federal trust land being held for the Pueblo de Cochiti. And we've already seen that in the past there have been removal of NMED inspectors off of that property that were doing water sampling for our mutual domestic and this type of thing. So you may have a hurdle to jump there in that last section that is a little more difficult to overcome than getting agreements from BLM and Forest Service to allow a county assessment in the area.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, folks, and I know, Adeline raised an important point too about flow levels. We're still, we don't know what the flow levels will be from the Paseo Real plant. And so at this point, if we're looking at possible interventions in the lower Santa Fe River, maybe starting with something in line of outreach, education, stewardship, might be suitable there. And I think that, and I guess I've also been conscious of the time today. I know we're coming up on about 10:30, and there's some other items on your agenda for today.
Take your time, Andrew, because actually usually the collaborative meeting is from 10 to 12. So we've got some wiggle room, and we want to take as much time as we need to have this conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So as we know, for the middle lower Santa Fe River, there's a lot of, I guess we could say, our flowing parts, right? Different riparian zones and possible different grant applications from different jurisdictions to be submitted. And looks like at least 2 studies going on, which I'll need to catch up with our utilities deputy director, Travis, and catch up with Zoe Isaacson from the city of Santa Fe. Again, so we can understand sort of bigger picture how all these sort of pieces could fit together in terms of space and time and responsibilities of different stakeholders. Sorry, is somebody chiming in there?
Yeah, please. I'd suggest reaching out to Sage Dunn again to talk about this work, because I know that she's been working on NEPA for the Camino Real section, and I think that's actually finalized. And I took part in a site visit to the BLM section of the Lower Box Canyon, and BLM is interested in conducting an invasive species removal project there. And the site visit included other potential funder partners, specifically Game and Fish. And so I know, yeah, it sounds like BLM is kind of moving forward with developing some of these projects. So I'd suggest reaching out to Sage Dunn for clarification.
Okay.
If I can make one more comment on that particular reach of the river. It's important to keep in mind, and because at this collaborative reading right now, I only see one other representative of a traditional community. It's important to keep in mind that the Santa Fe River and that reach as we know it has been stewarded and maintained by the traditional use of livestock grazing, and that where we see accumulations of invasives and we see over erosion or other types of degradation that have occurred because of neglect, I have to say that it is because in recent years, those are areas in which grazing has been curtailed in one way or another. Again, back to this one, we used to have our cattle down here on the river in La Hojada properly managed in the traditional fashion that we've been doing for 400 years. And at that time, we didn't have overgrowth of Russian olive. We didn't have overgrowth of the willows. It was, done according to traditional stewardship and according to BLM best management practices with the other allotments. And we weren't looking at then having to do things like bring heavy equipment into the course of the river and marshal up a bunch of volunteers to go pulling this stuff out. There needs to be a consideration for the traditional lifeways contribution to effective environmental stewardship. I think sometimes that concept gets lost. So I just needed to reiterate it here on behalf of the ganaderos and acequeros from La Bajada that have a long tradition of stewardship of that river. So for what that's worth, I'd like people to please keep in their minds that there is an effective and environmentally sound and regenerative and symbiotic place for traditional livestock growing to be occurring in this area. It is the nature of this watershed in the lower part. We are not talking about a Catskills or Adirondack type watershed. We are talking about an upper Sonoran transition zone with a Savannah River that runs through it. And so part of that, the only reason that has existed is because the traditional lifeway has been maintained and the stewardship of the ganaderos and acequeros have maintained it thus. What we see now as the lower Santa Fe River is in fact all the way from the Rael Ranch through Tres Rios all the way to La Hojada, except where it's been cut out, is a matter of human intervention and human stewardship and human symbiosis with the environment, not something contrary to it.
Folks, I'm raising one other subject too is Chin asked previously about connectivity. The county and resident stakeholders have ideas also about extending trails, protecting wildlife corridors. So this is something we're going to be thinking about. Our open space staff have done some good thinking about that, and I know Joseph as well from planning. So yeah, and it's something we want to keep in mind as a goal for trails and habitat corridors.
Just to amplify on that, is that those are exactly the same wildlife corridors used by our traditionally grown cattle and sheep that are used by elk, that are used by deer, that are used by bears, that are used by pumas, that are used by porcupines, that are used by raccoons, that are used by skunks, right? And that there is not, there can't be a perception of disharmony between the livestock introduced centuries ago and the wildlife that still populate that canyon.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Including beaver.
May I chime in?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I was, Jan, give me just 3 seconds and I'll stop. I do have a bit of an update on the RFP for La Cienega and La Cienega preliminary engineering report for a water and wastewater management plan to include some landscape and repair and restoration. Again, we're in the middle of the procurement process right now, so I mean, I could just update people on sort of procurement step dates. That's all I can do. But I could do that a bit later. And so anyway, yeah, please go ahead.
I would like to echo Karen's comment and recommend that based on what you've heard today and maybe other knowledge that you can gather, that you basically list the projects that the county is interested in supporting through this proposal, and then make a prioritization list based on pros and cons of criteria that make each site a potentially successful site. And that has to do with barriers to overcome on the one hand, several of which you have heard, or collaborations that need to be cultivated to make it happen. And on the other hand, of course, the outcomes that you're pursuing, both the load reduction goals for the state, but also ecosystem and habitat improvement goals, maybe educational and recreation goals. But the 319 grant is focusing particularly on water quality. So that needs to get a pretty heavy weight in your decision process, and habitat and aquatic life form improvement. So keep that in mind as you prioritize that. So that is kind of my feedback right now. And it would be important or interesting now to maybe talk a little bit more in the remaining time about the pros and cons of some of these sites, so that you can better evaluate what the prioritization is, and then create a priority list like Karen and maybe a few others said, and then see how your budget shakes out, but also in the preparation of the proposal, how your collaborations shake out to make each of these priority projects successful. Because then you will see automatically which ones are feasible to include in the proposal and which are not. That's kind of my suggestion for an approach that might be a way to really sort through this. And to focus your funding and efforts and all the partners here to help us look in the same direction to support this initiative.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you again, Karen and Jan for that idea. And in terms of amount of time, we want to be. Time is of the essence. NMED is aiming to release the NOFA this month. They have one other procedural task, which is they're working on establishing a purchase agreement for environmental service providers. My understanding, according to Alan Klatt, is that we may not actually have to follow that service agreement. The NMED may be able to contract directly with the county, and if we when we hire a service provider, we may be able to do it on an hourly wage basis. Anyway, but keeping in mind how much time we have to, prepare a grant application, we'll need to present to our Board of County Commissioners memo and resolution to request that they direct staff to prepare and submit the grant application, and then we'll have 60 calendar days to actually submit that grant application. But anyway, NMED, they've been easy to get a hold of, and they've been quick to respond when we've asked them some questions. After the NOFA is released, and any questions we have for them about the funding opportunity, we'll have to submit an email. So anyway, again, now is a good time to, if we have any more questions, where I can call across to NMED and get answers before they actually, the NOFA is released.
So Andrew, for today, what support are you looking for from the folks on this call, and how can we help move forward the strongest application for the county?
Okay, well, I think we've identified maybe 4 to 5 of sort of key information gaps out there as sort of as a baseline. We can follow those up, which is, conversation with Sage Dunn at BLM, conversations with me, with county utilities, and city also around their studies for the lower Santa Fe River. Putting together a list of pros and cons. I'll start working on that. But again, anybody out there too, if you're talking to stakeholders, or if you're talking to BLM, such as Reed suggested, interested in hearing more. And then what I'd like to do is set up another meeting with everybody here before the end of January. So again, we can sort of summarize what we want in the scope of that application, particular sites, what kind of benefits we're trying to get in addition to water quality, benefits being environmental, social, livelihoods, for example, biodiversity. Anyway, I see as these are sort of next action steps. So at this point, I'm not tasked for people on this call is just to continue thinking of the best way to move forward, and I'll follow up with some of these specific tasks that we've identified, and then maybe we can do another Zoom link for I don't know, Maury, if you want to send, maybe use your Zoom link for the next meeting.
I'm happy to. This meeting is for the Santa Fe River Traditional Communities Collaborative, which meets every other month. So we can meet outside of this collaborative time. So it might be best for the county to host it, since it's a county grant application. But of course, I'm happy to support however. So happy to provide a Zoom link and send out emails. I think everyone on this call has your contact information as well. So I'm sure that if more thoughts or questions come up, they can get in touch with you in the meantime.
Yeah, and I'm happy to set up the Zoom link, and I can share it with you, and you can share with the collaborative. So
sure.
Yeah, maybe even 2 weeks from now, 2.5 weeks from now, we could set up a meeting, or maybe a Thursday, same time, date different, that you actually have your meetings. Okay.
We can work on setting it up.
Right. Well, I'll put out an email with the proposed meeting time. Yeah.
And I would invite you, if there are things that maybe you can share over email and folks can give you feedback, just in case. I know it's hard to align everyone's schedules on this call. So there might be some things that are worth doing over email. I'll leave that up to you. But yeah, happy to support however I can at the Watershed Association.
Appreciate it, Maury, and yeah. Thanks, folks. Yeah, many good ideas on this call from the background and what's happening in the river and other locations currently, and sort of challenges and needs and opportunities. So thank you very much, everybody. I do have just a brief update on our the RFP for the La Cienega preliminary engineering report for a water and wastewater management plan to include some, riparian and landscape rehabilitation, restoration. The RFP went out in December 22nd. Okay, it's currently being advertised. We had a pre-proposal conference on Monday afternoon. I know some of you folks were on that. There's a deadline to submit additional questions from offers, which is January 10th. In email, and those would go to Nina Fresquez in procurement. The county will respond to written questions by January 17th. And then the proposal deadline for submission is January 28th of 2025. So anyway, that's that RFP document. The scope there is quite comprehensive and detailed, and I know staff and stakeholders worked very hard at putting together that scope. So we appreciate all that input. And with we do have an evaluation team or committee already established, and we'll be hopefully meeting in early February, and with any luck, we'll be able to contract a service provider in March. So.
Great. Thanks for those updates, Andrew. Any other questions for Andrew or other county staff?
I would just like to reiterate what Karen and Jan Willem said, is that the more you can capture those specifics of pollutant load reduction and environmental benefit under that grant, then I think Karen's exactly right. You've identified your path to success. No, so you can focus off on that, and then I think that the next meeting that we're able to have is more practical and already now pretty well informed, huh?
Anybody else? Sure.
Okay. Well, thanks again. Thanks for getting this conversation started, and we'll be in touch, and Andrew and I can figure out who's sending out the Zoom link and when, but it looks like we're tentatively looking at a follow-up discussion in 2 weeks from today. So we'll keep in touch about it and help support a strong application. Moving right along here, I think that I basically gave the updates about the aquatic ecosystem restoration grant applications that the city is exploring, given that I can't speak on behalf of the city. So I'm going to keep it pretty vague, but just that they are exploring those opportunities, but hopefully doing so in alignment with all of the other projects and plans that are being explored right now. So I'd love to just give the time to Darren, who has kindly offered or been coerced by Carl to give an update about the Caja del Rio National Monument designation.
They call that voluntold, you know. Yeah, so I'm a little disappointed to report that William and I are attending this meeting, and we're not in Washington, D.C. At the moment, to continue our efforts on behalf of the Hispano-American Communities Heritage Alliance to support the Caja del Rio Coalition and the National Monument Designation effort. So where we are at this point is that we have not succeeded in gaining access to the executive, meaning the White House. We haven't received an answer from presidential staff yet regarding the president's exercise of authority under the Antiquities Act to declare a national monument. We realize it's the 11th hour and the 59th minute. And in fact, as we jumped onto this meeting, President Biden was giving his eulogy for President Carter. So where we're at this point is we have scheduled attendance with the outgoing Department of the Interior Chief of Staff to the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland. Her chief of staff, Kate Kelly, had agreed to meet with us tomorrow between, I guess, 1 and 2 local. They were going to facilitate that meeting in DC, and it just turns out that if that was going to be the only meeting we were going to be able to attend without any further access to the White House, then it became impractical. Our congressional delegation has expressed a request on the 19th of December that the president make that designation. Interior was unfortunately, I guess, deterred from offering vociferous support to that by a recent All Pueblo Council of Governors resolution that came out with 4 clauses of land back claims embedded in it. So that turned DOI away from being a supporter along with the congressional delegation to the White House. And now, of course, we know everybody in the department is packing their bankers boxes and putting the family photos off the desks, et cetera, et cetera. So where we're at now is perhaps at the very last minute, we get some access to the White House through Senator Heinrich's office, but it is not likely. And the Caja del Rio Coalition more broadly is looking at how they may approach the new administration for some type of protections, or maybe they will continue working through the congressional delegation for some type of protections, be they national monument or not. Speaking, I guess, for just the ACHA, then I will say that we as well are shifting tactics, but the difference between a national monument designation and some other type of act of Congress that we see tacked on to, say, a Defense Appropriations Act or something like that, is at least our preferred alternative, that we do seek presidential authority under the Antiquities Act due to the nature of the intact cultural landscape that exists on the entire Caja del Rio Plateau. So that will remain ACHA's approach, and we'll have other conversations with the local community stakeholders, I guess, continuing this Saturday after we've met with Interior, and expect to be told that time's up, nothing we can do, and too bad our hands are tied. So we'll engage the incoming Secretary, Doug Burgum, on a similar level, at least to get departmental support. The new Secretary of Agriculture will be appealed to as well, so that both executive departments are able to carry the concerns to the president-elect. So the main point being that our position as the Hispano-American Communities Heritage Alliance is that national monument designation is feasible, and it will not involve some new round of legislative hijinks, but should be according to existing public laws of the United States. Acts of Congress that have existed since 1934, going through 1978 to 1984, and up until our most recent Title 54 guidance on the implementation of the National Historic Preservation Act. So that work continues regardless of change of personnel in Washington, D.C., but it is a very remote chance that we will see that type of designation coming out of the Biden-Harris administration at this point.
Thanks for the update, Darren, and thanks for all your work on it.
And could I
Yeah.
just add something? You know, we had some meetings, one at Buffalo Thunder with the tribal associates, and we also had all of the New Mexico delegation there, Senator Heinrichs, Senator Ben Ray Lujans, and Teresa Ledger Fernandez, representative there. And that was really pretty powerful. And, you know, I forgot Anna's last name, but she's Senator Ben Ray Lujan's staff, I guess the New Mexico staff
Romero.
person. Okay. And
Romero, yeah.
Yeah, and I gave her kind of a history of the Caja del Rio and the fact that we had a ranger that worked for the Forest Service and lived there at the headquarters, probably from 1930 to 1950. And she was saying, maybe we should go back to that, which was a very positive thing. And she says, well, we'll just write it into the legislation, and so at least maybe they're thinking about it a little bit more. So, that will help us in the long run.
Thanks, William. Any questions for Darren and William? Thanks again. Can you give us an insight, Darren, if you're not leaving, what that potential regrouping might look like with the coalition? Is there any?
Yeah, as William mentioned, our last meeting was super positive, particularly with the representatives from Tesuque and Okewenge. And the basis of that and the basis of consensus there was the recent memorandum of understanding between Tesuque Pueblo and both departments, Interior and Agriculture, for what was called co-stewardship on the Caja del Rio Plateau, specifically for sacred sites. And I guess that has been a slight departure from the other APCG resolution that I mentioned. So it's been operating on slightly different terms. I don't see, there's been, without going into too much detail, in the coalition building and the consensus building that we've been doing, some of us for 7 years, some of us for 3 years. William's been working on historical documentation and presentation of the Caja del Rio for something like 30 years. So gathering our stories and our oral tradition together and establishing the connection between our history and the intact cultural landscape as it exists today. So I'm not sure how the Caja del Rio coalition will realign itself. I'm not sure what the different environmental group stakeholders like CLF or WCF or New Mexico Wild think strategically about, and I'm certainly cannot speak for anyone else in the All Pueblo Council of Governors. But I will tell you that the local adjacent traditional communities are organized as the Hispano-American Communities Heritage Alliance, and that we'll continue to work in approaching that, hopefully on something a little more cohesive than what has been called parallel paths before. But looking at the reaction we got from Interior by our Pueblo cousins that were walking down the parallel path, I think it may be counterproductive at this point to have a lobbying effort that focuses on the Secretary of the Interior for whatever ethnographic or demographic reasons that seem to be a priority. So the work will continue. And again, the focus is protection of our traditional lifeways and that intact cultural landscape, and having that happen according to existing legislation, existing public laws of the United States. So that's at least I can tell you the direction of the ACHA. As far as I don't know if any of these groups are part of the coalition, but maybe they can speak to that better.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, William.
I just wanted to add, we need to thank New Mexico Wild for funding our trip, and the delegation that they assembled was Darren, myself, County Commissioner Camila Bustamante, and former City Councilor Carmichael Dominguez. So it was a pretty good group that we were going to send up to DC, and we were supposed to leave on the 6th and then the 8th and then the 9th, and we were going to wait for Biden to meet with us on the 13th or the 17th. And it was just a whirlwind of packing and getting ready. And but you know, like Darren said, it's the 11th hour and the 59th second. So you know, it's hopefully in the new year we can get it done, huh?
Good. Well, thanks again to you both, and thanks for the update. I want to turn it over now to Emily Wolf, who is joining us to share a bit about her position and American Rivers, and whatever else Carl prompted you to talk about. But thanks for joining us, Emily.
Thanks, Maury. Hey, everybody. Sorry I had to join an hour in, but it's great to see you all. I think I know a lot / most of you, and hopefully we'll get to know you all soon, if not. So I'm Emily Wolf. I live in Santa Fe, and just in the last 6 months became the Rio Grande coordinator for American Rivers, which is a new position for AR and the first in New Mexico. And they are a national organization that is focused on river protection from a bunch of different angles. And so they have an advocacy arm, a dam removal arm, river kind of straightforward conservation and restoration, and everything in between. So I am really excited to see you all and share a little bit about what my position is focused on, but it's also kind of forming as we go because it is new. And so there's a lot of flexibility and kind of good opportunities to work together and collaborate. So there's kind of 3 main areas that this position is focused on. One is the New Mexico Aquatic Connectivity Team, which is a very collaborative group. A few of you here are part of that and amazing partners on that. And the focus is really this kind of broad approach to identifying barriers to aquatic connectivity, which may come in many different forms, like old culverts that need to be modified or removed if they're no longer serving a purpose, or maybe they are, you know, rebuilt so that they afford better fish passage, or low head dams that impact public safety. For any of these projects, it's totally dependent on community interest, priority, meeting various sets of criteria that make them feasible. And so the team is kind of there to focus attention on where these issues are occurring, how we can support organizations like Amigos Bravos, who's here, Shannon, in existing project areas, and how, you know, whatever capacity we can add to that, as well as tackling other projects. And so in these early, you know, 6 months of my position, year into the team, we're focused on the Upper Rio Grande and the Upper Gila, but it's not limited to those 2 sub-watersheds. Really, we're looking at a statewide inventory of barriers. So it's a pretty interesting process. We're working with the Southeast Aquatic Resource Partnership, who is doing a big mapping exercise of barriers throughout the whole, well, a lot of different states. In New Mexico and Colorado are kind of newer to this process, but we're working through kind of project identification, working with practitioners and experts on the ground and community members, and then trying to just make the map that we have a really usable and a good tool for these holistic watershed projects. And so if you have any questions, I'm happy to pull up the map. It's a monster data set, so I don't want to like throw a huge map on the screen, but if you're interested in learning more, joining the team or following up, I'll put my email in the chat as well. The second thing is working on local capacity and just river restoration projects. So helping with any grant writing or finding kind of projects that could work together or be kind of bundled, and then putting, looking for federal or state or different sources of funding or support that could start to tackle some of the projects, knowing that local capacity for, especially for grant writing, is such an issue. So that's a priority of American Rivers in the San Luis Valley, as well as kind of the state of New Mexico and Texas, getting to be, although it's just me in the role. So it's kind of what we're limited to what we can do. So local capacity and projects implementation in that regard. And then finally, there's some state level advocacy efforts that I'll be involved with in the upcoming legislative session, including the surface water permitting program and primacy that a number of groups here have been working on for a long time. And so just starting to plug into those efforts for New Mexico waters. I can pause there if anybody has questions. That's kind of the short version, but I'd love to work together with all of you. And I've worked with Maury and Carl on some Santa Fe River watershed, just kind of proposals, giving support however AR can.
Thanks so much, Emily. Yeah, we're really lucky to have you headquartered in Santa Fe.
Yeah, glad to have you and your support. That's great.
Any questions for Emily about American Rivers or potential ways to lean on collaboration or bring them into spaces?
You just repeat what the map, what that data set is?
Yeah.
And is it online, or we'd have to ask you?
It is, I think it's basically, it's publicly available, but it is very like beta, like very in progress. I'm happy to I can share my screen and pull that up and show you all what.
If we have time, yeah.
Sure.
That sounds good.
You should be able to share it, Emily, but let me know if you.
All right, everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, a huge number of these gray dots would be they all represent some type of barrier obstruction to waterways, but of course, like not all of them would be feasible, or maybe not all of them are even real barriers. So the process that SARP used to create this map, which is very like big feat and very impressive, but it's kind of a collection of putting in data sets of actual structures and known like Lowhead Dam inventory, Dam Safety Bureau data. And then there's also a modeling component. So they're kind of detecting where water is pooling, or there might be a cutoff of a reach. And the job of the ACT, Aquatic Connectivity Team, is to go and prioritize smaller spots that we can go and assess on the ground and see in ground truth this map. And so there's also, I guess, one really good thing that I wanted to make you all aware of is that sometime in the coming months, probably in the next few months, we'll be doing a webinar, and then after that, an on-the-ground training so that practitioners would be able to use the Survey 123 tool that feeds data into this map. So that if you are working on a project on the ground and come across a barrier, a culvert or otherwise road crossing, you would be able to just populate this map. So any of these dots that I click on with information about that particular barrier. Because as you can see, a lot of these are very, very sparsely we don't know too much about them. So that is going to be, my goal is that this could be helpful in just solidifying, making our watershed data more holistic and very accurate. And these data sets start to just take shape as a helpful tool for watershed restoration. So we have these green dots which are very far and few between, are those that we've started to really narrow in on as good projects that we want to proceed with. And then pink, those are just to capture the nuance of all of this work, beneficial or barriers for invasive species, so that fisheries can be sustained without invasive fish, for example, going up. So that's reflected in here too. And we're working with Game and Fish and a number of different state and federal agencies on their concerns and ongoing work, as well as organizations. So that's the tool. So it's pretty interesting. And if you're interested in learning about the training or being involved, you can let me know now, or you can email me later, whatever works.
Thanks, Emily. This is Shannon. I was curious. I see that Andrew's still here, and I was just kind of curious if this might. So the first, hour of the call, we talked about the potential projects that Santa Fe County is going to apply for some wetland restoration, some education, and a few other things at several different sites in Santa Fe, on county-owned land. And I'm just curious if Andrew might think that this map might be a useful thing to look at as he chooses his sites, to see if there's anything that comes up as I mean, there has to be a nexus between, improving water quality and, since it is for watershed, based planning grant. But I'm just curious on your thoughts, Andrew, thinking about the first hour of this call.
Andrew, I think you're muted.
Yeah. Everybody, yeah, thank you, Shannon. Yeah, good point. I'll definitely reference this mapping tool. We're looking at possible sites for doing education outreach. Haven't used this particular mapping tool to date, but looks like it's going to be something we want to reference. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you both. That's a great flag. And anytime you want to just have a Zoom session and look at the map together, and then we can edit and add data as we go. This coming legislative session, I'll be doing mainly some just outreach and education with legislators on projects that are in their districts, so that we're starting to get a sense of what the costs of the projects might be, all the co-benefits that they carry. And it's a pretty small scale, but we're starting to strategize, what are we wanting to use our time for in this session and then in the interim afterwards. And so there's some good just conversations about what we can best do to, tell the story of what these projects could do right now, and then look at kind of what are some actions that the state can take and policies and or funding that can support these projects, but also all of the benefits that come along with them. So that's, we'll be engaged with some of the state legislators and senators this year as well.
Exciting. Thanks again. Great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, we'll start winding up the meeting then. The next agenda item is Watershed Association news, and we don't have much, but I do want to announce that I've had a short stint as the co-chair of the Santa Fe River Traditional Communities Collaborative. And after some thinking, I've decided that it's best for me to not serve as co-chair, but the Watershed Association will continue to provide administrative support to the collaborative however we can. But I think that it's important to strengthen the emphasis on the actual traditional communities members, and so it seems like the best role for the Watershed Association is to support from the background however we can, but to strengthen the voices of our partners who live and work and are the most deeply invested in the traditional communities themselves. So just wanted to share that. And yeah, support the future of the collaborative however seems best. So I think that's pretty much the only announcement I have from the Watershed Association, but want to open it up one more time for any questions, comments, any other matters that you all would like to discuss before we close the meeting for today.
Yes. I had the opportunity to fly over the Santa Fe River about a week ago, and in going down in the area below La Bajada, there's, of course, you get into the Cochiti land where there's a check dam and the flood control thing that was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. And right now there is a huge amount of water pooled behind that. So in thinking about the return flow credits, some of that water migrates underneath, but it's very much stuck behind that absurd engineering project, and that is useless. Anyway, I just wanted to share that I have some photos of it. I can't pull them up right now because they're not in a place to do that, but I'll get them to whoever wants to look at them. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
If I can give you one clarifying note on that, you may know or may not know that the Cochiti Dam only proved not to be able to hold the design amount of water in acre feet behind it in, I think it was 1988 when they actually tried to bring it up to design depth. Might have been 83, and found that the seepage under the earth-fill dam was actually raising the water table in farmlands on the other side of the dam and making them swampy and too muddy to plant. So the reason that you see that spillway still exposed there, that was supposed to be the overflow from the dam that still had controlled return into the confluence of the Santa Fe River and the Rio Grande. But as I say, they haven't been able to put water to design capacity in that dam since the 80s because of the inundation of the farmlands below it. So there's also, I don't know if you caught the gravel pit over there too, right? So there's gravel pits on either side of it, of Highway 16. But that's kind of what ended up happening once they realized they couldn't hold water there or keep that spillway there. Then Vulcan Materials kind of took over and started harvesting more gravel out of there. But just that's why it appears so absurd, is because you're like, how is this much water ever going to get over here? And it has happened in the past, but flood control, I guess, priorities from 1953 and onward that caused the construction of that dam. Times have changed. The climate is changing, whoever believes it or not. And, just an interesting, that's an interesting remnant of where that project originally started out and where we are with it today.
So Darren, was the flood control or the, what you're calling it's not a spillway, but it is, anyway, I walked over that sucker. So, that was built after the Cochiti Dam?
No, it was built part of the original project. And so the whole flood management project consists of Cochiti Dam. The Galisteo Dam was another contributing factor. That's why that one stays, that bed stays dry behind it, because it's only supposed to control flooding in heavy runoff events, which, we haven't been seeing in several years. But all of this was instituted by the Corps of Engineers after the big flood in '53 that actually Rio Grande flooded most of Albuquerque, even into downtown. So kind of, little after the fact. But even maybe it was 2 years ago now when they were doing repairs on Abiquiu Dam, they released water but held it here to the point where all of the recreational sites and vault toilets and all that were submerged, and it was only temporarily while they could do the work on Abiquiu Dam. But during that time, I had a couple real good trips, took a pontoon boat from Cochiti Lake all the way to the Buckman Rapids. So it's just that they can't leave it for that long or it ruins the Cochiti farmland below the dam. But that's the reason that you don't see so much water held there, that, there's even a stand of trees that it came out into 135 acres of farmland that from La Bajada that were condemned in 1972 for construction of the project. But they haven't been flooded like that, like I say, since the 80s during that test phase. And they realized that they were doing damage to the Pueblo's agricultural resources because they swamped out all that farmland from the seepage underneath the dam.
So we were told by Philip Quintana, who was the governor at the time, that the dam and that other structure destroyed the agriculture of Cochiti. And it took many years of negotiation and working with the Army Corps of Engineers to rectify that so that they could have water for growing crops again. So
Like I
yeah.
say, it wasn't for lack of water. It was for seepage and inundation of the fields underneath the dam. So what the negotiations were that they'll never hold that level of water behind that dam again.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Darren.
Yeah, thanks, Darren, and thanks, Bobby. Any last words? Okay, well,
I put it in the chat, Maury, but I just want to say it out loud. Thanks very much for everything you've done for this collaborative, whether it be as a co-chair or you know, a gnome or putting everything together and making sure, especially those of us that are across the digital divide down here and out on the periphery of the county and the end of the river, pretty much have had a forum in which to get together and have our voices heard all the way from Agua Fria down to La Ojala. That is important, and we sure appreciate you.
Yes, we do.
thank you so much, and that will not change. But really appreciate it, and appreciate all you do and all the knowledge you share. With that, we'll close. This meeting is recorded and we'll have it on our website and on our YouTube channel. So feel free to share it or review it. And everyone is invited to attend. So thanks again, and we'll see you all
Thank you,
soon.
Maury.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
Lori.
Bye.